God, our divine spirit, we thank thee for all the blessings you have bestowed upon our city and our residents. We ask you to guide us through this new year, allowing us to make the best decisions for our city, our residents, and all our city workers. We ask you to continue to bless our city. We ask you for peace in our country and peace on earth. For this we are thankful. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mayor Dale Masson. Here. Vice Mayor Terrence Rowe.
Here.
Councilwoman Nancy Britton.
Here.
Councilwoman Jenny Sorrell. Please let the record show Councilwoman Sorrell is absent. Councilman William Dittmer.
Here.
City Attorney James Matthew.
Here.
City Manager Vincent Lupo.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay, we have David Gray.
Good evening. I just wanted to call your attention to the fact that Leonard Lord and Jerry Ikus had me drop off the prayer guides, letting you know that there's going to be 40 days of prayer, and a lot of the churches in the West Pasco area are going to be getting together every day of the week for 40 days at various places, and once a week at the Oasis Coffee Spot, and we will be praying for everything we can think of, and you folks specifically, to make sure that that you're being taken care of in the process of your deliberations. So I just wanted to, you're invited to pray along with us anytime you get a chance. Don't have to do it every day, but every time you think about it, we appreciate it if you would. Thank you much.
Thank you, sir.
David.
I have Sandra Spaulding.
I just want to personally thank everybody for their card and for their prayers. I'm feeling much better, and I believe that the prayers brought me right over the edge, so thank you all.
You were good. Okay, anyone else like to speak? That being done, we will get the city manager. I'm going to flip that on the agenda.
Mr. Manager,
You're up.
I have several issues that I'd like to talk to the general public about, and in particular to inform council. I had a very, I believe, successful meeting with the county administrator yesterday. And it was a very candid meeting. It was one-on-one. We spoke about many issues, and the first and foremost issue was Orange Grove and Candle Lake Court. And I presented to him the various discussions that City Council had given me, and some of the citizens had presented to me. And I outlined to the city manager, to the county administrator, exactly what our desires were with respect to finally getting Orange Grove paved and completed. He agreed in principle and assured me that he would have the relevant individuals contact me so that we could move forward with finally getting the issues with Orange Grove resolved. It is a much larger issue. It is more than just the residents of Candlelight. It involves the people of Walnut, Pulsar, and then the individuals beyond Orange Grove. So it's a very positive step coming from the Pasco County and the county administrator.
And I thank you for that.
The very next issue that I brought with the county administrator was council allowed us to put up for sale a piece of property that we've had for many, many, many years on Ridge Road towards Little, mainly Artero Road. That property really abuts on one side a portion of a county complex. And I spoke to the county administrator about the possibility of the county acquiring that site from us, since we already have it up for sale. And I presented him with the overviews that were prepared along with the appraisals. And he seemed quite interested, in as much as it abutted county property, and that a county function, he could easily make ingress into that and expand that entire operation. So again, it was a very positive meeting with the county administrator. He then shared with me the recent grant being received. Actually, it's not a grant, it's return on FEMA funds for that related to the flooding that we just recently experienced. And part of that, which is extremely important, is that several $million of those funds will be going towards the correction of water issues at Magnolia Valley, and for us, Suncoast Gateway Trailer Park. So it was, again, an extremely important meeting. We shared confidences and we shared information, and I wanted to let council know that council has worked very, very diligently on trying to get relief for the Gateway community. And it would appear that the county is listening to us, and they'll be moving forward on that issue. Later on this afternoon, when you have your CRA meeting, you will be, and this is a point of updating to the general public, tonight those actions will not only complete the issues with Channel 19 and the dredging projects, but will initiate the steps necessary to prepare the documents required to obtain the RFPs for the dredging of channels 1 and 18. So the meeting subsequent to this one, the CRA meeting, is extremely important because it paves the way for the dredging of channels 1 and 18. Again, a major objective of the community and in particular City Council. I would just like to take a minute to speak about the tragedy that this community had several nights ago. And I refer to the casino boat fire and the terrible loss of life in the loss of Ms. Dempsey. I want to talk about our first responders and the people involved, and I'll just give a brief overview because I've tasked Sheriff DeCanio with giving you a full briefing. But from our dispatcher, starting with Denise Jenner, right straight through to the first three responders, Detective Russo and Officer Zabatic and Zimmerman, going into the water to try and retrieve individuals. Followed up by our fire department, Lieutenant Pollard and Firefighter Wood, Captain Koch and Officer Cox and Quinn out on the fireboat, and of course our police chief, DeCanio, along with the responders from Pasco County, Newport Richey, Coast Guard, Tarpon Springs Fire Department, Dunedin Fire Department. It was a concerted effort, and I would like to give special credit to the residents of Harbor Point who made it a point to come out of their warm houses to provide as much assistance as possible to the individuals coming out of the water. They opened their houses, they opened their garages, they brought coats and blankets. It speaks worlds about the people who reside in our city of Port Richey. There's one other issue that I would like to bring up, and that is the most recent efforts that we have been attempting to do with respect to the bike and hike trail and with the state FDOT and going under the bridge at 19. Mr. Muse has been working very successfully with FDOT. He's made tremendous inroads with FDOT, and we received correspondence from FDOT favorable to the projects that this council has put forward. The individual efforts by many of our council people deeply involved in this project, with the Vice Mayor up at the state level as far as the continuation of the hike and bike trail, with FDOT, the mayor, and all council people keenly involved in this project. It's an absolute extension of our hike and bike trail that can mean very different prospects for this city and for its future. All of this coupled with the events that are occurring now in our waterfront district, and the very soon dredgings of Channel 18 and Channel 1. So again, it is all positive information indicating the steps that we're taking to move our city forward. I generally don't speak to misstatements or misquotes or wrong issues coming on Facebook or blogs of that kind of nature, because many times that information is both misleading, erroneous, or absolutely incorrect. Somewhere along the line, someone had misunderstood what is occurring today and assumed that this city was purchasing another vehicle without going through all the proper procedures. But that information is 100% incorrect. The item on our list today, on our consent agenda, is simply the payment for a vehicle that was approved by this council after a very long discussion on October 24th. A vehicle that came off the piggyback and state list. The information that was provided on this blog is 900% wrong, and people should be a little more careful about what they send out to the general public. There are other dynamic issues that are occurring in our community. We will be having meetings with several new developments that will vastly affect the overall ability of this community to move forward and expand. Some of it has to do with new residential sites, residential housing. It has to do with commercial development beyond Whiskey Joe's and beyond Walgreens. So the city is up and moving in a forward direction. I'm proud to say that this city council, unlike the derogatory statements made, is well aware of what their citizens are asking of them, and they're concise and clear in their directions to the administration on how and what to do to proceed to achieve the goals and objectives. And I'm proud to serve this city and this city council. And that's all I have to say, Mayor.
Okay. To council, any thoughts?
Well,
We're not allowed to think according to that.
Pardon?
No thinking in this council according to Facebook.
No, bobbleheads.
I add my special thanks to everyone. I'm sure everyone on council does, for everyone that participated, from our first responders down to our neighbors. Well done, one and all. It was tragic. We had to lose a life on that situation. My thoughts when I first learned of it and got out there and looked at it kept going back to what a catastrophe it might have been if they were out further. The loss of life, I think, would have been a lot worse. And so, as tragic as that is, I have to say well done and thank you to all those who helped and had anything to do with this from miles around. And good news from the county, I'm glad to hear it. Orange Grove's been waiting a long time.
Yeah.
And Hike and Bike Trail is a project dear to heart, so we're anxious to get going tomorrow. Thank you.
Well, I think, basically you stole the words out of my mouth. I'm really, thank you all for everything you did. Thank the citizens for everything they did, and thank all the other first responders from the other cities for what they did. That was a great, you're right, it would have been a horrible tragedy had it been further out, and it's unfortunate that we did lose somebody. I was quite surprised, actually. I hadn't heard that at first, but we'll hear more about it. Thank you all.
I also wanted to thank everyone as well, but I also had a question on all the new developments. I've had some concerns from citizens about traffic flow, and I know we discussed having an assessment done on traffic flow. Where are we with that?
We're moving along. We've been thinking about this for a while. Have we already scheduled the through fair?
No, what we're doing is we are tasking a traffic specialist to come in and do a traffic analysis. We're talking specifically at this point in time, not only the waterfront district, but all the way through.
Well, I'm talking about the Avalon project, Avalon
right.
Bay project, and also the Bay Boulevard project.
All the way through from waterfront project, all the way down Old Post and all the way out Bay, because there are several projects. Some are on Old Post and some are on Old Bay. There are potential housing projects that could mean several hundred homes on one direction or another. We are looking at both the requirements that would be placed on the developers with respect to how they would assist in modifying roads wherever necessary. And secondly, on what specifically we can do as a city to either improve or alter our traffic flow for our citizens. One of the issues that I brought up at the last council meeting was the extension of Ritchie Drive all the way through. And we have already tasked an engineering company to start to come up with those issues, along with some other minor issues, including sidewalks. But we are moving forward on that project. It's hand in glove with any future development. It's tied in to our building department's meetings with the developers who have been coming in and talking with us.
Okay, all right, thank you.
In addition, that Ritchie Drive extension will.
For Avalon Bay, that makes a lot of sense, but
Yeah.
the Bay Boulevard ones won't do anything for them.
It's just we've talked about making some little acceleration lanes where possible. And of course, in a disaster, to just make it a one-way street. So if you're leaving, you better leave, and if you're coming, you better come. Anything?
No, sir.
The Ritchie Drive thing, I think we're pretty well decided on that.
We're moving forward with Ritchie Drive. Once I get the
We gotta have
costs, then we'll come
statistics.
back and discuss it, but there are adequate funds for it.
And somebody will charge us quite a bit of money to tell us that it ought to be done, and you already know it will. So that said, any other comments? I'll get into my litany and we'll go. The first providers, God bless you, but you get paid, that's your job. The people like Mrs. Hashem and Mrs. Dermer, and I know there's a million other ladies out there that were helping, and we thank you all. There's a whole lot of unsung heroes out there. Okay, Hike and Bike Trail, just a little update is, that thing came back from Bob Legere. That was him and Tom Brown's original plan, and well, you weren't on this, but they made me go to the MPO because the mayor's supposed to go, and that was off the books. Now we got it resurrected to number 18, and it's now going to be number 5, and the first 4 others are funded. So Bill has, I don't think there's any secrets, he dredged up a letter from what, 2002, Bill? Something like that from Hooters. They'd be happy to help us with that. Whiskey Joe's is gonna have to already build theirs. So we're really along the way. We gotta get to that. There's a parcel we need to look at on the east side. And then, you'll have to update me, but we do need to meet this week. If you have any time, you said Tuesday afternoon, I think, but no other times? Oh, you can, okay. You and Eric get together, I'll be happy. Okay. I could think of that. I would like to, I want to tell the Suncoast people, Fred and Patsy, I told you we'd go forward with this drainage for Suncoast. Let's see here. One thing that many of the people on the south side have been asking us to do, and I think is a prudent idea, may or may not help anything depending on who you're talking to, but if we were to copy this county regulations for property maintenance and building, I think they're a little more stringent. I don't know that the enforcement of everything is more the deal, and I don't know how you enforce all those, but it might be a good idea for us. We are moving into the future.
As you know, Mayor and Council, from the last meeting or the meeting before that, I spoke to the issue of housing improvement, housing, and general housing issues and code enforcement issues related. But I also talked about another vehicle to aid people in coming up to standards and developing minimum housing standards. The building department has been very aggressive in working out and coming up with modifications that will be brought to council that will aid us in enforcing our minimum housing standards. But also, they have almost completed the design and development of a project to provide grants to approximately 50 or 55 residents, first come, first serve, owner occupied, to basically have a partial matching grant to for paint, for windows, for doors, for all the other issues that revolve around exterior and visual home items. That project is almost complete, and very shortly we'll be coming to council to share it with councils for council's final approval. Council has set aside in their budget that amount of money, approximately $50,000, for this program. So it will be rolled out, and it will affect approximately 50 to 55 homes, depending upon how the grant is structured. And it will be eligible, owner occupants will be eligible, and there will be no income limits with respect to the grant. It will be for specific items listed, and it will vastly help improve the visual appearance of the community along with the basic stock of the houses.
Okay. And my I'm sorry.
No,
Nancy,
are you, I'll wait till you're done. I just
no,
wanna ask
I'm
one-
flipping to another
No,
ADD.
I just want to quick ask you a question about that. You said there's no income level. Are we sure we want to do that? I mean, in the past, people that have plenty of money were able to do these fix-ups, and people that weren't really suffered. They were not able to do anything. They had to come up with money up front. I just wondered if we could look at it in a different way to give the really low-income families an opportunity.
The initial program is a very small program. It'll only affect approximately 50 to 55 homes. There will be very specific items that will be eligible. It will be a matching grant up to $1,000, not beyond that. So it will preclude some of the events that happened in the other program that came from this community where the money was eaten up immediately for large-scale items. It's very specific, and it will affect just about anyone who has to do painting of their exterior, doors, walkways, banisters, fascia, downspouts, gutters, and roofs. So it's a very limited program. And if someone wants to come in who has the wherewithal to spend $5 or $10 or $8,000 towards an air conditioning system, that's a different ballgame entirely. We're aiming the project for item specifics, so that will keep that issue pretty much down.
Well,
I doubt
that,
But we can discuss that.
We'll bring the program to council for council's final approval before we
at
send it.
risk of agreeing with Nancy, I would say maybe a good way would be to have the code enforcement guys go around and pick houses that are gonna fall below the minimum standards and offer that to them. Just a thought. Do you have any others? But it really is kind of silly to.
The project is quite limited, and the issue with respect to income limits sets a whole nother layer of bureaucracy with respect to what you're going to need to prove your income, and it goes on and on. The amount is so small in many instances that may not be an issue. We'll finish putting the program together and come to council and of course accept any suggestion council may have.
Right. Okay, we can get through that one, and I had one last one, so I'm keeping you ahead of the game on this.
It's okay.
Edging. Bill, we were gonna redesign the ramp after we fixed the launch. We were talking about redesigning the ramp because of the chokehold there in the river at 5 o'clock on Sunday and various Friday, etc. The boat on the police boat is gonna have to be moved, and I would suggest that if Sand Pebble would allow us to, we could move it out there, then that wouldn't be in the way of redesigning for some extra floaters. And then, you know, we'd have to there's just a rock in that channel. We could do that in a more timely order, maybe.
That's a good point.
So if you can, when you start redesigning, the police boat will be gone, I hope, depending on Sand Pebble's master. And then we can get that dredged out quickly with one rock. Anybody else? All right, I'm done. Oh, Terry.
There's a couple here in the back that want to discussing tree farm that they had, and I don't think they realized they needed to sign up.
Is this out of the
It's
sunshine?
your call. Either that or they could bring it to building official.
Anything I need to know?
There's a couple of people here that came to speak, and I don't think they realized they needed to sign up.
Well,
Can we hear them before we move on?
yeah, I offered. Anybody want to speak? Speak.
They're new to our,
I'm sorry. I thought you heard me.
Okay. Archie Wimpy, 8301 Congress Street.
Yes, sir.
I need to get some hurricane debris removed, but I don't have any, the land that did touch the city, I sold that. So I'm, you know, I can't get to any city street except my hurricane debris. What?
I'm not
Can
following
you
you.
come back and get it? Because I was told it had to be on the side of a city street.
I know where your place is, right off Congress.
Yes.
Now, are you saying that there's a debris in the?
Not in the city.
It is in the city. I
Yes,
know
in
it
the
is.
city. I was annexed in.
I go back there all the time and look at the lakes.
Okay, all right.
I
now I
took
know
you
what you're
back there.
talking about.
Okay. Now, what are you saying?
Where do I put, or can you come back and get it off my land, or do I have to carry it to,
You can't go on private property.
Well,
and you can't take it out to Congress Street?
you've got about
Congress is
7
out
acres
now.
there, don't you?
16.
Well, I don't know, if we could make an exception, this is a very unique parcel, as you know.
Chris?
Chris?
Do you own the west portion, the back part by Siesta?
No, I
No.
saw that.
That's the trucking portion, Chris. Then there's a little fishery, and then Mr. Wimpy.
Yes.
And I don't know, I would be for giving him a hand. There's a lot of land back there, and he doesn't look all that spry, and I couldn't carry all that.
Yeah.
Anything from the legal end?
There's a gate there, right?
Yeah.
On each side of the gate is our drainage. So if he puts it in front of the gate, then he can't get in and out of the place.
If he could bring it out to the gate, which I believe is what we're talking about, if you can get it there, we'll have someone there to pick it up for you.
Well, we've got water on both sides of the gate.
What I'm saying is, the road is here, there's water here, and there's water here. And there's, on 7 acres, I know that these people are gonna have trouble. If we could make an exception, it'd be nice.
I got 2 trees in the canal now because the hurricane brought down another one.
Oh, by the way, that is county. That canal is their drainage. We need to get it.
Well, start going on private property, you have it all over the city.
We keep getting past the buck.
Okay, so there's 2 trees. I don't know that we can do that. We have to, can you check on whether, I don't think that is, I know that's a county canal.
There's a basic.
We'll try to help you with the other.
There's a basic general rule that we do not go on private property. I'm sorry. There's a basic general rule that we do not go on private property for many reasons to remove debris. Debris is generally placed out at the curb where we can obtain access to it and remove it. We don't go on private property because of the potentiality of causing damage to that private property. And it has been a long-standing practice of this council and this government not to do that. So I would suggest that you get with Mr. Hughes. We'll see what we can do, unless.
Or maybe you have any volunteers that could help these people? There's just 2 of them, and it's a beautiful place.
I was just getting ready to talk about volunteering us for something, for what he was talking about before. I would have to get with the group and find, I can't speak for them
Okay.
on that basis.
Chris? Yeah. Whoa, come to the podium. Come to the podium, Matt.
Chris?
I'll go out there tomorrow morning and actually physically go out and take a look at what they have and,
Okay.
assess the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I would,
And we'll go from there.
I think
Without
this
me
counts.
physically, going out and just putting my eyes on it.
If it helps them, Mr. Mayor, I will donate my equipment and help get it to the street for
Would you do
Chris
that?
and the city manager.
The
If you wanna
problem still,
have somebody get
if
ahold
you
of
would
me.
do that, Matt, it'd be great. The
not a
problem
problem.
still becomes it's gonna have to be on that side of the gate because there's water on each side. Out, as soon as they get out to Congress, there's water on each
As long as
side.
the city manager's okay with it. and Chris
So
is
we
fine,
will, Matt, if you get Matt's number, we'll get it as close as we can, and then Chris we'll get it taken care of,
Thank you very much.
okay?
Mayor, one more
Yes.
comment.
Yeah, I didn't come prepared to talk about this because I just heard about it tonight, but you're wanting to look into taking care of some substandard properties. And as part of Somebody Cares, we've been doing that for about the last 12 years. Some of it happened to be city property, actually, that we were painting and fixing up. And we are particularly, as Somebody Cares, on our Care Fest, we work with the elderly, we work with widows, we work with people that can't possibly help themselves. You said that it wasn't income specific. I would be happy to work with you to help address some of those people that are just absolutely indigent and can't do anything, to see if we couldn't do something to help clean up their yards, clean up the facades of their houses, or the general cleanup to help them.
We certainly welcome your assistance, and I would ask you to get with the building department, and we can certainly work something out, particularly in that case.
Yeah.
The issue for this particular grant is owner occupants. But in addition to that, if a project is started and could need additional assistance, we'd love to work with your organization.
Yeah, we usually get our names from the Meals on Wheels folks, the elderly nutrition. And so they know, they're in the people's homes all the time. They know what they're going through and what their place looks like and how they're living on a substandard basis. So to have another place for it to come through, that would help to feed our desire to help those folks.
Well, let's supplant that with this certain problem, which I think you'll find a lovely property back there. If you could help them and Matt get that out, they're maybe not disabled, but if you or I had to clean up that 7 acres, it'd be a big problem. So you might want to do that.
All right, I'll get with Mr. Hughes there.
Okay. I hope if anything doesn't go right, call me. We are at the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve consent agenda?
Second.
I would like to ask a question. Mr. Lupo, you commented we discussed this on October 24th. Did we take a vote at that time?
Yes, sir. You, not only did you take a vote, this was after a long discussion, there was a vote, and it was approved, and we moved forward.
Why is it back on the consent agenda?
It is solely on the consent agenda for payment.
Oh.
That's all it's there for. It's, we purchased the vehicle, the vehicle's here, now we have to pay for it. You approved originally approved the amount in the original budget, then you approved the specific purchase that came off of the piggyback state list. So you had a full and thorough discussion. That discussion was brought forward by Councilwoman Britton and eventually voted on by all of council. So it was voted upon and approved by council.
I believe that's correct.
It is correct.
I think, if I recall, the consent agenda usually was for payments. And this evidently is a payment, but it's already been approved. So I question its need to even be on the consent agenda, being it was already approved, it should just be paid. I think this is where some of the questions and some of the irritation with the public is coming from, because they see things on consent agenda, like copiers and other things. It may require us to do a little more work, which I'm not opposed to at all if it makes for a more transparent administration. But I think anytime we purchase something, it should be an item. It should not be on the consent agenda unless it's something like payroll taxes or maintenance fees, other things like that. If we're buying something, I think the public has a right for us to expose it, discuss it, and have all the details out on it, because this is, I think, where some of this is coming from. People think we're trying to pull a fast one here. I don't see why this is on here if we've already approved it. I don't know as we've done that before. Maybe we have, but I don't.
Where do we draw the line on what items make the consent? Do we have to consent to payroll taxes, or is that an automatic one?
No, that would be one of the things that we set the consent agenda up to kind of work through that.
That we approved in the budget for the fire products, does that not go back on there again? The other items on the consent agenda?
Correct. If we've already done it, I don't see why it
Don't
comes
bother?
back to us again. It's,
I guess we have to
Well,
write
it's
the
an
check.
extra layer of transparency.
it is, but people are looking at it like we're sliding it through, and that's why I think you got this problem with Facebook. Is that people thought we were gonna buy a
Second.
building department vehicle for $21,000 without discussing it, because that's what it looked like when they saw it on the agenda.
There's
Why
no,
don't we
was
just,
on the
why don't we
agenda
just
in
put something
October.
behind it, if you guys wanna put it out there, just put behind it, pre-approved by council and the date it was.
that is
pre-approved.
exactly what we'll be doing in all future agendas. The consent agenda is there specifically for items that must be paid over a certain amount of money. But with respect to any item that was previously approved as a purchase item, we will put the specifics right alongside of it, stating clearly there was a pre-approved item.
Yep, so that'll stop all that.
Yeah, it should stop it.
Okay, and I hope Bill C. is happy, huh?
I hope he's drinking non-alcoholic
Okay,
cough syrup.
let's go. Mr. Lucas, you've been waiting long enough. And
Evening, ladies and gentlemen.
to set the record straight, we were the first ones, I believe, that called you, thanks to Mr. Matthews.
That's correct.
Okay.
My name is Jeff Lucas. I live at 1154 Sedgefield
just
Could
Court.
you hold 1 second, please? I don't believe there's a proper vote taken on the approval of the consent agenda, sir.
Oh, we didn't.
Excuse me.
All in
Yeah.
favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
I'm sorry, sir.
That's okay.
That was a quick enough one, Jeff.
My name is Jeff Lucas. I'm an attorney. I practice here in the Bay Area, including Pasco County. We have 2 offices in this county. I resided in Pasco County for 22 years. Currently, I live in Pinellas County at 1154 Sedgefield Court. My law office employs approximately 50 people in this county. We're involved in a consortium, if you will, a group of law firms. And I will pass this around. I only have one left, and I apologize, but I will get more for the city. Our law firm, along with these other 5 law firms. What are we doing exactly? I'm going to just go through a brief presentation, and any questions anybody has, I'll be happy to answer them. I spoke a little bit about this with a few people, but we've all read about the opioid epidemic and what it's done to our communities, and how that's led to crime and other problems in society. Our consortium, our group, is the one that started this. There's 4 main groups. Even though there may be hundreds of law firms involved, there's really 4 groups that have been set up in what we call multi-district litigation to start this. Our group was the first involved and has the most cases already in the hopper. It's important to know that because we think that timing is important with these type things. If any of you saw the 60 Minutes special that was on about 60 days ago, roughly 2 months ago, all the experts on that presentation have been hired by our group and are exclusive experts. So we think we're well positioned. What's this litigation all about, and how can it help the city of Port Richey? There's roughly 800 drug distributors, manufacturers, excuse me. There's about 150 primary distributors of those drugs, and out of those 150, there's 3 of which control 85% of the market. Now, our litigation deals with these distributors primarily, but also the manufacturers. Those distributors are Cardinal Health, American Bergen, and McKesson Corp. These are $300 billion corporations on the Fortune 500 list. They have enormous revenue. And what happened in 1970, Congress passed what they called the Controlled Substance Act. And this Controlled Substance Act was designed by Congress and also members of the DEA. And the thinking behind it was, there's all these drug manufacturers who are distributing drugs, and we're talking about opiates right now at this point, that are distributing these drugs to Walgreens, CVS, Publix, all these retail distributors. And the DEA does not have enough people to monitor all this. So they came up with the idea, they gave these drug distributors basically a license to print money. But with that came a very specific requirement. They had this thing called an ARCO data bank. And that ARCO data bank was supposed to monitor all these retail establishments, essentially. And these 3 drug distributors that have 85% of the market, they were supposed to look out for things. For example, you might have a CVS. I'll use a real example, a CVS in Polk County, where the drug distribution from that CVS was equivalent to a city of 100,000 people. This is a real case. And so the brakes were supposed to be put on so the DEA would be alerted by these drug distributors, and then they can investigate. And the idea behind this was Congress recognized that these drugs are very addictive, and it's better to get ahead of the problem rather than wait till it gets out of control. They were designed, this database was designed to monitor individual doctors. If doctors distributed more than 10% of a doctor in a like community dealing with the same thing, it doesn't mean they'd be shut down, but they would be investigated and looked at. None of these things happened. These distributors never alerted the DEA. There's a law firm in West Virginia that's part of our group, and this man, Mr. Green, took these issues all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States and won. And he has a copy of this ARCO database. They took it all the way to the Supreme Court to prevent us from getting that data. It was actually a boo-boo how we ended up with it. So we have the data for every county in the United States of America, and the Supreme Court ruled we can have it and utilize it. Pasco County, Pinellas County, City of St. Pete, Hernando County are the counties we're working with. We also represent the entire state of Rhode Island. about 80% of Kentucky, a huge portion, I couldn't give it to you, 40% of Ohio, and our Mr. Gaddy, who is part of Levin Papantonio, one of the law firms that's driving this consortium, he's on the standing committee to run the whole thing for the United States of America, along with another attorney from Motley Rice, okay? So if you hire our firm or any other firm in the area, or somebody from Kentucky or anywhere else, it boils down to these four groups that really run the show. I'd like to say my law firm here in Pasco is the driving, we're not. How we got involved is Levin Papantonio, for those of you that don't know, is in the panhandle of the United States. They're one of the most powerful, richest law firms in the world. They do primarily products liability and things of that nature. They're a multi-billion-dollar law firm. Our law firm has been involved with Levin Papantonio on various projects for 15 years, including defective products cases. Sometimes we litigate the cases directly with them. Sometimes we just refer them to them. We're working on a case nationwide dealing with veterans issues where we're suing the country of Iran, for example. In those cases, we're involved in the litigation. In these opiate cases, I want everyone to understand, we're not. We're just referring them. Now, my partner, Jim Magazine, has been invited to litigate some of the cases with them. So that's our involvement in this case. Our fee is going to be 25%. There's no out-of-pocket cost to the city of Newport Richey. If we win, you win. And we're pretty confident we will, although I can never guarantee anything. What is the claim? It's a nuisance claim, essentially. It's kind of ingenious. The man that designed this in West Virginia, he came up with the idea that the county, for example, here in Pasco, would file a massive nuisance claim. How do you resolve a nuisance claim? You have to abate the nuisance. Well, if you think about it, what would be the abatement of the opioid nuisance of Pasco County, say, or Port Richey? It could be adding more police to deal with the crime. It could be a drug treatment center. It could be what you folks pay for health insurance, because it goes up every time there's an opioid epidemic. Health insurance costs go up. The sky is the limit almost when you think about what just the drug arrest here in the Walmart, right down the street, on how many resources it takes up of this count, of this city or any other organization or county in the area. We will indemnify the city. So if we incur costs, you don't pay those, but even if we lost the lawsuit, we would sign a hold harmless, so the city would incur absolutely no cost. So what is the risk to the city of Newport Richey? Zero. There is a great deal to gain. One of the things that happens in this litigation and part of this epidemic is I have all kinds of bar charts and statistics to show you that once the opioids, which were initially legally distributed by doctors, and this is not the target of doctors. This is going specifically after the distributors and, in some cases, the manufacturers that created this mess. We have people, we were talking before the meeting, that get an ankle surgery and were given 200 Oxycontin. There's research to show that 25 years ago that would never happen. But the distributors got together with the manufacturers. They're paid, I believe, 6 cents per pill. Well, they created a situation where they actually created a whole bank of science to indicate you could give more of these opiates safely. So they did this over the course of 20 years, and then they convinced the manufacturers to give them 7 cents a pill. That sounds like no big deal, but we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars. So our lawsuit would not cost the city anything. I don't know what questions you have. I'm trying to answer I know I only have a few minutes. The lawyers that are spearheading this are some of the greatest on the planet. Their resources are unlimited. They can take on the largest corporations in the world. I'm involved with them suing the 8 largest banks in the world in Europe for money laundering with the Iranians. These are big. These are players that can tackle any project. Of course, there's no guarantees with anything. But that's it in a nutshell. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I ripped through this pretty fast, and I apologize.
I just want to make a quick comment. So when I first saw that article, you know, I watched the 60 Minutes thing, and then I'm reading online, and I saw that article, sent it to Vince, because I sat back for many years and watched the doctors, because I worked 25 years with doctors, take the brunt of a lot of the, you know, the reason, you know, the doctors have been blamed for years that, you know, they've caused the drug addiction to many of the people that are in our community. And I haven't always agreed with that. That article really enlightened me, so I'm glad that you came tonight.
Well, there's always, you know, more than, you know, there's always not the, you know, one way or the other way. There's 3 or 4 reasons for things. There's a lot to go around and blame. For example, there's a doctor on Ridge Road who no longer practices now. That individual distributed enough opiates for 1 million people. Okay, and that's fact. I can prove that.
Right.
So yeah, there are people that have done things like that that take advantage. And the worst thing about this addiction is we also can prove wherever the police really move in and start shutting down the pill mills, then you get into the secondary effect. Everywhere that's happened, heroin addiction follows, because these people are already addicted. And you know, years ago I practiced in criminal law, and I've seen judges tell people, okay, issue a suspended sentence, say, all right, Mr. Smith, you realize if you violate your probation or your house arrest one more time, you're looking at 49 years because of your past record. Do you understand? And within 4 hours, they're doing whatever they're doing because they're already addicted. It's too late. So I'll tell you one other story that I mentioned to somebody, and that is the unintended consequences. The regional manager for racetrack in Tampa Bay area spoke to Sheriff Nieheis in Hernando County, and he set up a meeting because he was so mad he wanted to talk to him about it. And he talked to the sheriff about how it costs racetrack more money to operate in this area than other parts of the country because their health insurance is so high. What's the connection? Well, he said, Sheriff, you have no idea how many of my people are out cleaning up the parking lots of the racetrack that stabbed themselves with a needle. And the sheriff said, I don't believe it. It can't be that bad. So the manager said to Sheriff Nieheis, I'm in Hernando County, I don't remember, let's say every other Tuesday. Next Tuesday, you call me whenever you want. I'm 20 minutes from any location. Go to any racetrack you want, and I'll meet you there in 20 minutes or less. And he did. And they went in the ladies' bathroom, and they found hypodermic needles. And he had the video camera, and he could show that it had been cleaned like about an hour before. So within the last hour, somebody was in this racetrack. A lot of times the hedges that surround the place, the workers are stabbing themselves. Well, they're getting hepatitis. They're getting AIDS. AIDS is on the comeback. One AIDS patient can cost as much as hundreds of thousands of people on your health insurance. That's the largest cost increase for both the Pasco County and the Hernando County Jail right now is their cost for health insurance. So things you wouldn't even think about. Our nuisance complaint will abate that because we'll provide the resources to cover that insurance, to build that extra facility or provide more police officers for the city or whatever. And I don't know the specific needs of Port Richey. That would be up to you folks to decide how you spend the money.
I think that one of the things I would like to see, and just, you know, we don't need to debate this right now, I just want to put this out there, is, you know, there are a lot of families out there hurting because their children, the mothers and fathers, you know, their kids are messed up. And if we could get those kids straight and get them back on track, that would be the best thing we could do with that money and make them citizens that can go to work and have a real life. That's what I'd like to see some of that money go for.
Did you pass out your one pamphlet?
I will happily pass it out. And on the back of the law firms involved, the Green Ketchum, that's the individual that started it in West Virginia. For the record, he's a multimillionaire lawyer that was sad about what was going on in his West Virginia town. He took it upon himself to start this, took it all the way to the Supreme Court, won. He He then brought it to Levin Papantonio, the enormous law firm I mentioned. Levin Papantonio got the rest of us involved.
Okay, and then you're, may I have that? I just want to breeze through this. Our city attorney apprised me of your situation, and I don't know if you remember, but I called you
Yes.
maybe in September-ish.
Yes.
So, but Jim had us on this before the article hit.
Good.
And I already opted in, but you'll have to decide the rest of it. This is a major problem. And just speaking as a physician, you give 50 people an opiate and 50 others, so 100 total, almost 50-50. They take one pill, this 50, they're addicted. They never get off it unless we provide something. And these people over here, they leave it in they take one or two or whatever they need for pain, and they're not. It is some sort of genetic problem, I'm not sure, but I can tell you, I know at least 2 women that got their molars, same story, got their molars pulled, they were given a few Percocets, haven't gone a day after that without having an opiate. And somehow you're gonna help, I hope, figure out how to, you can't stop people, there's a legitimate use for them, and there's is high that I can't explain. But you're gonna deal with that, I hope, or that
Yeah,
is.
you know, there is, of course, a legitimate use for these medications. I had throat surgery. I had 6 pills that I took, but I've heard of people having surgeries and they're given 250 pills, and it's almost a prescription for disaster. Now, we would argue that, kind of think of the cigarette litigation. The way that turned was, you know, most people said, forget it, everyone knew what they were getting into when they smoked. But when the research came out and they proved that the tobacco manufacturers were increasing the nicotine content to get people addicted, and then they had ad campaigns directed to children, that's kind of when it changed. Well, that's what this ARCO database shows, is that these folks knew it was addicting. In fact, that was their plan, to convince orthopedic surgeons and to convince others that you could give more of these because they were getting a bigger cut of it. So they directly profited from this enormous epidemic.
So when you say they, do you mean all the manufacturers or all the medical companies like McKesson, all 3 of them that you mentioned?
McKesson is a distributor, okay? Now, we think the drug manufacturers have a really good defense. That's why our litigation is different than most. Our primary target is the distributors. The manufacturer's defense is going to be, hey, Congress, you set up this ARCO database. We don't know where this stuff is going. We sent our stuff to Cardinal Health. We sent our stuff to McKesson. We're not investigating every drugstore and every doctor. These 3 distributors who made hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, okay, that was their job. That was their only job, was to keep track of this and then say, the actual rule was, say a doctor on Ridge Road, they started distributing 10% more than the average in this area for these type issues. Immediately, distribution was supposed to stop, and they were supposed to call the DEA. DEA looks at it, oh, it's no big deal, doctor's really busy, or it could be legitimate, but they never did that. They never did that for 20 years. And it wasn't until there were other drug rates. The one at the CVS in Polk County is a real case where the local sheriff and federal officials were investigating a drug distribution ring. Just by happenstance, they bumbled into this information where this specific CVS was off the charts. So they stopped McKesson because they found that McKesson was the one that was supplying that CVS. So McKesson has distributorships all over the country, including Florida. So McKesson just simply stopped distributing from Florida because the DEA was all over it, and they started sending it from Tennessee to that same CVS. So even when they were caught, they didn't stop. And let's just say they lose $100 billion, and I'm just making silly numbers up, $200 billion. They still win. That's what they look at it as a cost of doing business. They don't really care.
Go ahead, Terry.
My question, they're going after distributors because of the 1970 Act.
Yes.
And because they have the money. But I knew someone that was addicted to Oxycontin, and through their own grit, they got treatment. Now, the medicine, whatever it was that they were taking, had to be bought at a pharmacy. And I remember the complaint that they had was they had to go through such anguish to get the medicine that would help them get off the Oxycontin. And this was a short-term type thing. I forget the name of the drug, but what I'm getting at here is, you know, you've got the patient, the pharmacy, the doctor, and then the distributors. It would make more sense to me to go after a pharmacy and make sure there's some kind of block that this person ran into when they were trying to get the very drug that was getting them off of the Oxycontin. That is where your first line of defense is. There should be some, I mean, we've got computers today. Everyone's got this sign for that drug when they get it. You would think that that would be the place to stop it, to start with. If you get so many pills, bang, the red flag goes up, and an automatic program should send that thing to the DEA. But I'm not sure the DEA has the manpower to even do what we would like them to do.
They probably don't. In fact, when it comes to each individual pharmacy, they don't. And a lot of the things you've mentioned with this database that they created, and actually was created, about 15 years ago, that is having tremendous help. That a lot of what we're doing is to fix the problem that's already there. A lot of the computer system to create, to eliminate doctor shopping, to going to this CVS to that, a lot of that has been fixed. And now it's leading to heroin because they can't get what you just described, some of the other medications. So our litigation, really, the bulk of it is to deal with the problems this mess has already created, not what's going to happen the next person that goes buys a pill. Some of those controls are already in play. And you're right, I represent over 1,000 people in auto accidents and other medical malpractice and all kinds of things that are injured, and workers' comp and disability claims. Our firm handles all those things, and a lot of the good people can't get the medicine they need now. It's a lot harder for them. And in fact, there's pharmacies in this county where they just don't sell the opioids anymore because they needed police 24/7. The Walgreens on Little Road and Embassy, they have to have police there 24/7 because of all the robberies, because not every Walgreens has opiates anymore. They concentrate them in a few stores, and they pay police to guard them. It's a nightmare. It's a lot worse than, just ask your chief how many of his arrests are drug related. And we're not just talking illegal drugs. A lot of it is this opioid stuff.
Well, I'm going to disagree with Terry somewhat. The drug that they're supposedly get, methadone, to get off this clinic we have a clinic in town, I'm sure you know. As far as a nuisance, I think it's the same thing. I had a young lady that I took there, was already going there, but I took, and because she was never going anywhere, it's just same dose. Every day she has to go get methadone, methadone, methadone. So I went in and I told, and they have to pay, I think it's $85 a week. I went in and I said, look, I will pay for her every week as long as you take her down 1 milligram a day, which they did. She went from 45 milligrams to 30. I went out of town, she went and partied, you know, this deal. She gets back to the methadone clinic, and they, instead of leaving her at 30 and going on down as we had agreed, they took her back to her original dose of 45. And I bet you, I'm just gonna say this to the camera, I bet that clinic hasn't graduated one patient. Nobody gets out. We want you to feel signs. We want you to feel good. Don't feel. This is a serious problem, and it goes further than what you're doing. I wish you'd look into that as well, because methadone is not, all it is legalizing their highs. And I don't know how the doctors live with themselves, but anyway.
We can talk all night about
Yeah.
those issues, and I'm not here to fix the drug problem, I can't do that. But what we can do is get the city of Port Richey compensation for the effects of the problem.
Well, I already voted us in, so you three need to think about, do we need to make a decision
Table
today?
this so we can have more time to look at it.
You want
Yeah, I
me-
mean, any information you need, I don't expect a decision today.
Okay.
Whatever you need, I'll get it to you folks. More information about the consortium, I will fill you in on the number of cases. Our group is, in fact, you know who's done a really good research on it? Is Jeff Steinsnyder for the Pasco County. They're supposedly, I'll believe it when I see it, but supposedly they're gonna approve it in the next couple of days. We've been working with him for 6 months. He's researched every group. He did a nice memorandum to the county commission. It's perfect reading on how the whole thing was laid out.
Okay. Do you think that there are statistics of patients on these methadone clinics that ever get released and are drug-free?
I would have no idea, but
I mean, would this man you're talking about have done research on that?
I don't know. I don't want to answer, but I'll certainly check.
If you would check for us,
I
I'd
absolutely
really
will.
appreciate that.
Just,
Okay.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Just a quick question, Doc. The opiates are there to help with pain. If by some miracle we could get rid of all the opiates, what would we use for pain? What else do we have for that?
Well,
There's I'm sorry.
I will only say, we never get rid of them, all of them, but my partner, Jim, had surgery about a month and a half ago, a neck surgery, and he used a neurosurgeon in Clearwater, and that neurosurgeon put some sort of oriental root in his ear. He never took even an aspirin, and he was back to work 2 days later. So I know orthopedic surgeon in California that we talked to in this, who was in a horrific motorcycle accident, and he got hooked on opiates himself. He made a point to never do surgery on anyone again and give them opioids, and he developed this whole practice around doing it. And he does spinal surgery on people. So there's ways to do it, but do I believe that opioids are gonna be eliminated because of this? No, and I don't even think they should be. I wouldn't have wanted to have my throat surgery and not have a pain pill. Okay, it was like swallowing glass. But that doesn't mean we can't go after the folks that basically created this horrific problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In answer to your question, I think that the opioids are always gonna be here because they have a certain place, like the gentleman said. All drugs, when they're invented, they're a panacea, then they're a horrible thing, then they get their right, reasonable place in the pharmacopoeia. But I really wanted to know about these methadone clinics because they just line up, and the East Side people have to put up with this, and I just would like to know if they ever graduate a patient. So, and Suboxone, by the way, is your next one.
Thank you.
That's gonna be your next epidemic. Okay.
Thank you.
When do you
Thank you,
want,
Jeff.
what do you want to,
Well, I will answer that the sooner the better. If you research these MDLs, getting into these types of litigation, the earlier the better, kind of like a BP thing. It could radically affect the resolution of it. So that's for the council to decide.
Okay.
If you decide it's 25% fee, there's an indemnification clause. There's no cost or fees unless you win. The contract will be provided. It's a standard contingency fee contract. And if you're interested, and I do encourage you to get the memorandum that County Attorney Jeff Steinsnyder developed. He didn't just take our word for it. He interviewed other groups. We've worked for the county in the past on behalf of the BP oil spill that Port Richey benefited from. We were involved in that. And I encourage you to keep that pamphlet, research those lawyers.
yeah, if you could get the other councilman, I'm gonna hug on to this.
I know, that's the last one I have. So,
So you're never gonna get,
no,
you're not
I
gonna print it?
came here on short notice, so I apologize.
We'll distribute it.
And in that, just so you know, that was prepared for the county originally. So there's an agreement in there talking about the county, just disregard.
We'll make appropriate copies for council.
I'd like to ask Jim a question. Have you looked through this at all? As far as I'm concerned, I want to go forward, but
No, several months ago, I had read the litigation in the other states and chatted with Mr. Lucas. You haven't signed with the county yet, right? You're on the verge of that with Pasco County
I'm told
representative.
tomorrow, the next day, I forget.
And Pinellas?
Pinellas, I know we have St. Pete, I'm not sure about Pinellas.
You have St. Petersburg you represent,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you should take a look at the information there. He's not the only show in town. There's 3 others, and he's being very honest about that. That's why he's standing there. I guess you want to look at that. Number 2 is, Jeff, could you explain? It's the hardest question. You know where I'm going with the next question, right? This is going to be, not going to be millions of dollars probably. We have 2,000 people. You understand what I mean? Normally they do this with much larger cities. Jeff's here, because we're really small. Do you have any idea, in a home run, how much money?
I only know that when Mr. Gaddy, who spearheaded the whole thing, gave the presentation to the county attorney in Pasco, that question was asked by Jeff, your counterpart at the county, and he said, I can't tell you, but I can tell you that Pasco's a big county, and he gave statistics from West Virginia where he successfully litigated this in about a third of the counties in the state of West Virginia, which is much smaller. He gave an estimate for Pasco County of $100 million.
There are 500,000 people, and we're 2,000, so you can do the math. It's couple
It's a lot of money.
$100,000 number. So, my suggestion, table it. We're tabling this. If you could get some copies of those, send me the contract, so I can go over
Okay.
it, and then council can bring it up again, right?
yeah, so what do we just table it to the next meeting? We want to agenda it next meeting?
That's up to you.
Can everybody get,
Next meeting, I'd just like to have a little more time to
Yeah.
go
yeah,
through it.
but what are you going to study?
I'll have this, I'll have this copied and sent to you.
Before
Okay.
you do that, give me a day. I may be able to get some sent. I just ran out at the office, and I'm so sorry.
Okay.
You may not have to do that. I'll get it. Give me one day. Otherwise, I'll tell you, go ahead and copy it.
All right,
Okay.
you will just contact our clerk.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas. Well, Nancy, I think the other part is we need to start thinking about how to devise a plan too that would work, that's not draconian, that can eliminate. It's all over these streets. Here in Newport Richie, I think is
Right.
2 of the top pill mills in the country. And they're now stamping, for the audience, these places are stamping their own pills that look like whatever, Dilaudid's and things like that. And they're putting fentanyl in.
Oh,
Fentanyl is 500 to 1,000 times more potent than morphine. So if you know any kids that might be wanting to experiment, they can die from this. So for what it's worth, I'm really not happy with it. Okay, we're going on. Quit babbling now.
You know, the sad part is that anybody's kid in this room could have done that, just because they don't think it's gonna harm them.
Right. And I know of a couple of cases where they got one drug that they were familiar with and they shoot it up. And I know of a couple of cases where people died because whoever had stamped put fentanyl in it. And so these druggies knew, they know they could take 1 of these pills or 2 of these pills or whatever they do. With fentanyl in them, they die with the dose they think they were taking. So this is serious. Okay, I'm gonna go quit preaching, huh?
3. Item 3, sir.
We're on 3, yeah. Update on the casino boat fire.
Well, Mr. Lupo, you covered most of it, but I'll just reiterate that our thoughts certainly go out to the family of Carrie Dempsey. I saw her while the medics were working on her and doing her vitals before they transported her, and unfortunately, she passed away a few hours later at Bayonet Point. The autopsy has been completed. We don't know what the results of the autopsy are yet, but again, to go down the Harbor Point community was amazing. They turned out in force. Next to the emergency vehicles and the first responders that were in that area where the people, all the garage doors were open and people just walking around with coffee, blankets, towels, extra clothes. They were letting some of the people even take showers in their homes. So it was just phenomenal. Like, as you say, Christine Hashem, she was out there taking vitals and making sure
Right.
everybody got
I
treated
heard
properly.
And then-
Larry Santangelo, he opened up his house, and when everybody cleared out later on that night, I went into his garage. He had boxes and piles of clothes and towels to do. So Patty Dermer was there as well, and there was another family giving out coffee to all the first responders. By the time the sun went down, it was a little bit windy on the Gulf, and it got pretty chilly. But I'm extremely proud of our first responders. They, as you said, Mr. Lupo, Detective Russo, Zimmerman, and Zebecca. They got there right in the inception of this incident. They dropped their gear, protected, and ran right into the water, right into that muck, and were able to assist. I don't know how many people, bring them to shore. When I arrived there, we had assets from Pasco County Fish and Wildlife, Pasco County Fire Rescue, Pasco County Sheriff's Office. The fire boats were on the way from Tarpon Springs and Dunedin. They sent assets up, so it was great to see the brotherhood and everybody worked together. It was just amazing. The helicopter, I know it kept you awake, but the helicopter was up for several hours.
It was the airplane.
And the airplane.
It flew over so many times, I don't know what they were gonna do.
The C-130 was up there as well, and I think that was for thermal imaging. We didn't have an exact count. We were missing 3 people, and it was just a miscount. We weren't sure if they were still in the water because that fire just burnt so quickly that there could have been somebody stuck on that boat. Luckily, there wasn't. We did have, the next morning, we got a call out there. Somebody found a pocketbook. We were able to successfully return the pocketbook to the owner with all the ID, paperwork, and money in it. So it was an extreme success. Denise General, our dispatcher, she didn't break under the pressure. The 911 was ringing off the hook, and as well as the constant changing of the radio frequencies, we had to get everybody on the same radio frequencies. And in our county, we're fortunate that they can do what's called a patch, so we can talk to the other fire departments, even though that we're not on their frequency. So we were on a patch with Pinellas County and Dunedin, and it worked very, very well. We had police officers and firefighters, Tom Quinn, Officer Cox, show up without even being called, and they haven't put an overtime slip in. They just came up, they showed up, and they just went to work. So it was. I'm extremely proud of everybody, the way that we worked, and then the way we work with the other agencies as well. So in the future, I'd like to do some civilian awards. I haven't been able to get all the names of everybody yet, but we'll come up and have them before City Council. We'll do the police officers, the firefighters. I've started to send out the thank you emails to the various agencies. I'm still fielding calls from the Coast Guard and passengers that were on that boat, and some news agencies. So we're working out the time frame and the method that they're going to remove the wreckage. I was on the phone with the Coast Guard this morning, and that's under the works. That's in the works. Yeah, they have to pull permits, and the Coast Guard will inspect the vessels and the people that are going to come and take the wreckage out of the water, and the method that they're going to use. Some of that is hazmat, so it's got to be put in barrels and offloaded properly. So it's going to be quite an undertaking. But again, we certainly didn't want. We thought we got through the night without any fatalities, and unfortunately we had one. But had the captain of that ship not brought it closer and run it aground and was out any further, I think we would be looking at a lot more fatalities.
I think Sun Cruise did a very good job, whoever the captain is. I'm very proud of you guys and our fire department, and the city of Port Richey is becoming a family, and it was shown. So thank you all, and thank you.
That's it. That's all I have. Thanks. Thank you.
Where are we now? Okay, Resolution 18-02, texting and driving. Do you want to take that, or do you want me to take it? You want me to do it? Well, for me, you're the lawyer.
The mayor is proposing a resolution. As you're probably aware, resolutions do not have any legal significance. I'm not sure. I presume some state legislator gave this.
Yeah, I got it through the state legislature. I gave it to you, but I'll be happy to say.
in terms of legally, and then you can follow up, Mayor. Right now, texting and driving is not a primary offense. So if you're texting and driving, you can't be pulled over, all right? It's a secondary offense. So right now, for a police officer to issue a ticket for texting and driving, they have to find that you're doing something else wrong and then pull you over and can give you a ticket for that also, as if you got in an accident, and then they could say you were texting and driving, et cetera. From my reading of the resolution, this is an attempt to promote upcoming legislation in this, legislative session to make texting and driving a primary offense, as it is in many other places. That's what I see, that's written.
Right, and I mean, I can't support this enough. Many of you that text may be upset with me, but the statistics I got said the fatalities are up 18% over the whole thing. With kids, it's higher. And I don't know, I gave you that letter, or?
I don't have which one.
Okay, at any rate, it's a huge problem. And I hope you guys, if we pass this, will pull them over and keep them from getting killed. Any thoughts on this discussion?
Just a question, not only do we text today, but we verbally text, which is a little different because you just kind of hit your button and you talk the text into the phone and then it goes.
Well, I don't think they can find out, they can see you doing that. When I see a lady putting on her makeup and texting and trying to drive with her knees, I think that's an accident.
See me already, don't Caught me.
Okay, I'll give you that one, yeah.
Okay. I don't know how they could ever pull over anybody that was, I mean, that's, to me, sounds like a reasonable way. It's like hands-free talking. But trying to text, actually text.
If we were to find someone in the city texting, and this isn't evidently is not law in the county or the state, am I following it?
This is nothing more than a state legislator wants to change the law to make it a primary offense, and whether he has the city's
So
support.
we're rendering support.
Right, that's all.
Okay.
Nothing more than that, Mr. Rowe.
Nance, any other comments, Ms. Dittmer? Do we need to?
We have to make a motion on this?
Yeah, well, if you want to.
Motion for consideration? Is that
Well,
what-
if you want to read it at the next meeting as a resolution, you'd want to vote on it first, or then, if you don't want to do it, then it'd be a little embarrassing to put it on.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I did with the last.
Get it over with. I mean, all it is whereas. And dude,
Let's see, it's
this
on the
is
agenda.
a logic situation as opposed to legal. Do you think it's okay for people to text while they're driving?
No.
I
Yep.
don't.
So a motion to accept Resolution 18-024 consideration.
Right.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We caught up to the power curve. Old business is gone. Any other thoughts?
You have a CRA meeting after this.
Yep.
We do. Okay, adjourn whenever you're ready.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-minute break, okay?
You can
Get right into
you
it.
can get right into this and get
Okay,
it.
we can get right in it. Nobody
Go
wants
right
to be
into it.
social anymore, Artie. Okay. Let's call the order of the CRA, January 23rd. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Pass. General public would like to speak to this? Do I have anyone? Is this Ms. Baldy? Did you want to speak?
What are we speaking on? I was having
You always want to speak. Go ahead. You don't need to know. It's about the CRA.
I know it's about I know we're at the CRA meeting.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm being
No.
irreverent.
I just really want to say how proud I am of our city manager, our city workers, our council. I have been in this city a long time, and our CRA money has been used for the good of our city. Our city now is growing so fast, but so sturdy. Now listen to my words, and strong, not as we have done in the past, going too fast and falling down because we didn't have a good foundation. But because of all of you now, at this time, the foundation is solid. Our city is solid. And I think everyone should be proud of everybody here and show more appreciation. I'm going to leave you with that.
And God bless you, my dear.
See, I have something.
You have a good, I know you have something to say. Okay, bring it to the board here. Anyone have any thoughts before I start going off?
Get right to it.
Mr. Dittman?
Keep it
Okay.
rolling.
What we're doing tonight's pretty quick. That site development's already been, we've already okayed that. What I want to do, and I can just push Mr. Lupo as fast as he can go, and I know he's got more on his plate, but I want to keep this dredging like going. And if it's necessary, we're going to approve, I'm assuming, that the 1 and 18 engineering plan. He gives us he says it'll take 45 days. I don't know why, but we need to start lining, 45 days for this and 60 days for that. I want to move this thing. I want to live
Mayor,
to see the last one done.
Mayor, the very,
60 seconds just to say it.
you're right. Mayor, the very first thing that you have to do is to approve the consent agenda so that we can pay for the work that we've already accomplished.
Okay, motion to approve, please.
Motion to approve the consent
Second.
agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now, for the public's information, that was already,
Now, the very next item that will move us forward with respect to the CRA is the approval of the task order proposal from Dewberry Engineers to develop plans and specifications for the dredging of channels 1 and 18.
Motion to approve.
second. I can't do that.
Second.
Discussion?
No.
Anyone in the public want to speak to the dredging? This is for the next two channels.
1 and 18.
1 and
Right.
18.
It'll be Shrimper's Channel, we call it, the entrance to the bayou, entrance
And the
and
one
exit.
alongside of the park.
And the next one is City Park. So, all in do you all want to go over this, it's not a very expensive thing as engineers
No.
go.
No, that's actually,
Considering
Yeah, I
it's
was
very
engineering.
pleased.
yeah, me too.
Don't
Yeah,
say
no.
it in public, they'll raise their prices. Okay, so I have a motion and a second.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now, let me get on that. And that's it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you,
Hey.
council.
I do want to say, let's, guys, just, I should have done, we'll do it next time. But what I'm saying, I'm gonna be on Stewart, he just watch it. What I do think,